Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Wednesday, March 6th. I should have fixed the chat so that it will, the post will last a little bit longer, like a lot longer. 600 seconds should be more than enough time before something fades off. Right now, with the number of people chatting, it rarely becomes a situation where the chat messages down in the lower left hand corner ever even have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 messages, enough to even fill up the box. Eventually, like this, I'm trying to future-proof this stuff, but it's kind of pointless to try and future-proof anything on YouTube because YouTube changes everything all the time. Another thing that's as on my back burner is I'm gonna try and see if there's a way through Nightbot to remember and recognize when somebody posts, so that when somebody posts for the first time, it will say, hey, last time you posted was this is the first time you've ever posted, or the last time you posted was a couple days ago. That would be helpful, certainly, to even if it really is just a automated process and it's not me personally remembering, it is a reminder to me to go, okay, this is somebody who has chatted before, because it is starting to get to that point where there's enough variety, even if there's not a lot of posts in one particular stream, there's enough variety of different people commenting. We've got a challenge a friend and win 2 games of any kind, and win 3 games with Paladin or Warrior. Theoretically, we only need to do 2 of these, and we need to do the Tavern Brawl, so let's do that. This is the first Tavern Brawl after the 3 weeks of Rusticon Rumble Tavern Brawls. And so this time we're going for just basically an arena run. Okay. So you're gonna get a free entry here. And it doesn't seem like there's... all your minions are 1/1 and it only costs 1 mana. So, legendaries? Like, isn't that exactly what you would do here? I mean, you could play Mage and destroy some 1/1s on some occasions, or you could play Warlock and draw some more cards, and I think drawing more cards makes more sense. Okay. So let's do this. Alright. So the first thing is, if they're all 1 mana, then they would all be even. No, odd. Well, is 1... I guess 1 is odd. So, if I type in odd to start with, let's see, odds. 0. Seven. I guess this just highlights when you go over this. Interesting. Why do I not have that card that says odd in the name? Interesting. Wonder if maybe they eliminated things. Let's see. Looking for the card. We'll take this for sure. And this. And this. And this. Wow, I'm a little surprised we still have that. This one, This one, this one, this one, this one. It must have taken out the card that says, like, I could steal all their cards. I don't see a reason why I'd want to do that. Let's see. That one. A lot of these death rattles would certainly summon new things. I don't know if that one actually works. See, I guess I could switch to a whiz-bang deck immediately. That's an interesting idea. We should think about doing that. There we go. And then let's see some other legendaries. Take that. Take that. Fill your hands with copies of this minion. That would work nicely. So it seems like there's been a little bit of a trick here. I'm not sure if there's too many more legendaries I want to play. What else would I want to play? If it's just going to be a 1-1 version of itself. We could... Let's see. I guess we don't have a quest card here? Let's see. Destroy a demon. Give it +1 health. Take a couple of those. Take some more health. I guess. Take some more health. We'll just stock up on health. And take that. That works, I think, pretty good. There. So, theoretically, yes, we'd like to get 12 wins. Let's see whether this really happens. I guess I can't do the whiz-bang thing, though, because I'm definitely not going to spend $1.99 on Hearthstone to have this happen. Look at all these gold legendary cards.
Gul'dan versus Jaina.
Hopefully I understood this right.
Your soul
Yeah, I did.
shall be
Okay.
mine.
Alright. Okay. Yeah, let's do this. I think we can do this just fine. So this is all just about effects for the most part. And let's see, this guy's got a 1-1. So we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do this. And then end the turn. Yeah, so let's see, what did I do? I've wrapped up as many of the these Star Wars games I want to play, so I'm done with that. Like, that's just not no more thank you for any of that, because like I'm just not that big of a Star Wars fan, frankly, and And so I did all the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, X-Wing, Alliance, X-Wing, TIE Fighter. So there's like 4 games in the series, and they've at some points, some of the re-releases, some of the versions of them were almost playable, but not quite. Let's see. Let's see. There we go. See, I really don't see how this would ever, like, change. Like, everybody's just gonna play all of their legendaries until you can tie in something slightly better than that. Now this card might work, but I don't know. Let's see. We have a death rattle here. It would be a 4/5. So do we want to play control?
For honor.
Yeah, see, that just summons a 1/1/2, and it really shouldn't. There we go. But see, a card like this, he can still just use his things, his hero power to kill it.
The Frost Wolves stand ready.
And of course, that's all they're gonna do. So I'm immediately gonna lose here. Yeah. I just don't. I'm just done with the Star Wars games. I need to now hunker down and schedule all those videos as I'm losing here. I guess a Whizbang deck probably would have been forced into 1/1 one-mana minions too, so it probably isn't any better than what I'm doing here. I assume I get a card pack even if I lose all 3 of this. This would be very annoying if I didn't get a card pack. But I would just be like, whatever, fine. I'm done. I'm out.
Your soul shall be mine. I am your nightmare.
Let's see. Hold on to this. Trade this one. Yeah, and so otherwise there's...
None will survive.
If I did this, I would just have 1 health. So I really don't think that would be a smart move.
One for all and all for me.
So yeah, I don't really have, I guess, anything else to say. I played a bunch of the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter games. It's still very much, it feels just so difficult to get back into maybe what is a fantasy concept. Maybe I never really got more than 3 or 4 hours of footage done in a day. It doesn't feel like that was the case. It felt like, at least for some games, I was playing for 8 hours a day. But I could be wrong. I guess that's... That's kind of all I can say, is that maybe I was wrong. Or maybe I've just gotten more tired and less energetic, or maybe I've gotten less games that I was hyped about. Let's face it, when I first started my YouTube channel, I was covering a lot of games that I was super hyped about, but that was 5 years ago, and now it's more of a job, it's more of a daily grind, and there's reasons I think that would change. Alright, so what if we were to do this?
Face Jaraxxus, Eladar Lord of the Burning Legion.
Okay. And then this. This sucks. This sucks horrible. Man, that is useless. Ah, that's terrible. So I found 2 ways to lose immediately.
Sting like a bee.
Like, I have no idea what the next thing I'll even record is because there's so much scheduling that needs to be done in between. And then I need to figure out when that ends. And a lot of this is going to boil down to, I think, barely, just barely, alright. Do you want to do this?
I bring life.
Destroy a friendly demon. Restore 4 health. Okay, hit this. What is this doing? It's doing a lot of damage to me is what it's doing.
Sure, send the big guy.
Yeah, I'm about to lose again.
Behold the might of Stormwind!
Also, it's particularly colder where I am right now, so I'm cycling between turning my fan on full blast and ceiling fan and my ceiling fan on low. I can't have it on medium because it rattles at medium, which sucks. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna lose here. That's what I figured. Let's start going through the news. I guess if I've got nothing new to say, then we might as well talk about the news. Let's see. Twitch support. We're slowly rolling out our live activity feed for creators from mobile app to your live dashboards. See who subs, cheers, hosts, raids, and more all while live. Check it out. Okay. Let's see. We're getting a lot of, from my news sources in particular, they're getting a lot of repeated posts, like just retweets. That's still being a problem. ScumVM has got a post about the Google Summer of Code that they participate in every year, which is not really anything too much about video games other than it's just encouraging people to code and create the ScumVM emulator to become better and support more games, which is kind of where it does, which is, it's nice, I suppose. Seriously, you're gonna do this to me? You're gonna... I just gave that card over to them. That was stupid. So I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed right now because there's like 5 new posts. But a lot of them are just repeated. Alright. Make sure Nightbot is running, and let's start going through games. Last stream was pretty short, and I'm perfectly fine with just doing 2 episodes. There you go. So... let's see. a turn, I suppose. So, first game we have on Steam, man, I'm moving slow today, is a game called And I Must Scream. If you are a long-term fan of my channel, you probably may have seen me cover a old point-and-click adventure game based on a novel called I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Or it's like a line from one of the books in some short stories, and the entire game is based on a mix match of those short stories. This thumbnail is showing He Has No Mouth and I Must Scream. So it's an homage, and this looks like it's an adventure indie game. It doesn't look to me like it's just redoing or trying to remake that game. It's free, and it's English, so I guess it looks fine. Looks perfectly fine for what is probably a really short experience.
One for all and all for me.
Let's see.
Prepare to face the mighty Millhouse in a storm.
Let's give them this. There we go. So yeah, for a free game it looks fine. Do I need to cover it? No. This is as much coverage as I can really afford to give any free game. I don't think it would be fair, particularly to say that phrase or that name deserves a permanent exclusive like copyright type thought for what is just a short sentence. So if somebody else wants to make a game with a similar name, that's okay. It's maybe a little bit scummy because there might be some confusion there, but even in that instance it doesn't make a lot of sense, because this is hardly somebody making a game that is putting something like Fortnite in their name. Like if you made a game FORT space KNIGHT and put it on Steam, I'd have a problem with it, because clearly that's just trying to create brand confusion. I don't know if there really is any brand that exists for that old point-and-click adventure game to be confused by. Let's see. These guys are 1-2s. How did they figure out how to summon something that wasn't a 1-1? They must have done something to it. Yeah, the Blood Imp gave it. Like, the Blood Imp is the best card. Just this card and the Blood Imp are the only two cards that even work on this. So even though I'm playing all these legendaries and they should work amazingly well, they really aren't. They eliminated things. Like, if I could be playing what is the one I'm thinking of? If I could be playing some of the other legendaries that are probably in Wild now, that would change the scenario a lot.
For honor, the earth are upon us.
Moving on. Gematsu has an article. Gwent, the Witcher card game expansion Crimson Curse, launches March 28th. Over 100 new cards and more. At this point, I don't think anybody's talking about or playing Gwent. Like, I do want to do the DLC for The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine at some point, but that's kind of it.
I can wait and fish all day.
In turn. So yeah, Gwent had a small chance at some point to be the groundbreaking one. Well, that was that. Like, it had a chance to defeat Hearthstone, and quite frankly, if Gwent came out right now, there might have been a chance at it, but it did come out too early. So 25 dust and a pack. I suppose slightly better than doing an average arena tavern brawl, but it did also take 3 games, 3 pretty terrible games. Well, we've got an epic. So now what do we do? Paladin and Warrior is still what we're up against. I kind of wish that the new expansion was coming a couple of weeks earlier. I'm ready at this point to get rid of a couple, redo all of these decks. Let's see where we are as far as the last expansion. Like, as far as Rusticon's Rumble, how much of this do we really have? Seems like after the next expansion we could probably get everything up to epic pretty cheaply, because the blues that we're missing here would only cost 100. Maybe that's not realistic, maybe it is. But we're going to be tight on gold because we're going to have to hold onto gold for the next expansion, the single player expansion, so we're only going to open like 25 packs instead of 50, even though we have enough to open 50. And that actually may not work out that way, because it may be that we get a bunch of daily quests in between the release of the new expansion cards and the release of the new single player part of the expansion. And if that's the case, then we could buy more packs, I suppose. Yeah, that's 12 pages. That's not terrible. And Rumble really is the only one I think I could justify buying. Like, I don't see how it makes a lot of sense to try and open or make anything else. Yeah, classic wise, this is the only card we don't have in classic. So any of these classic cards that are going to the Hall of Fame, which are at least like 6 cards, are going to end up giving me a lot of dust. I should look at it on the other accounts and make sure I have those cards in classic right now. That's something to do off screen, I suppose. But yeah, if I can get a boost of dust, particularly on the Asian and European account, that would be helpful. And if somebody was online to challenge a friend, that would be nice. But meanwhile, we'll do this. And it's Paladin and Warrior, right? Need 3 victories for? Yeah, Paladin and Warrior. Alright, we'll play this, and we'll jump into this. GameIndustry.biz has an article from schlocky licensed games to critically acclaimed indie Oxenfree co-director Sean Krenkel on the collapse of the shovelware the collapse of shovelware and how it helped
I will
shape
fight
Night
with
School
honor.
Studio. Now, let's see. Oxenfree. What is Oxenfree? I remember hearing about it. But I can't remember what it is. I think Oxenfree might be that puzzle game. Oh, I did this wrong, clearly. Let's just do that for safety's sake. It might be the puzzle game where you go forward and backward and rewind time. Or Oxenfree might have been the point and click adventure game. Like, that's the thing. Let me just Google Oxenfree. That though, yeah, Oxenfree is the instead of describe it, let's just show it.
Let me think.
This, and then, am I ready to do this? No. Alright, so Oxenfree is this game. You can see it's rated very positively by people who played it. It's a point and click, like, multi-dimensional, supernatural, choices matter, story-rich game, according to the tags. And you just have these conversations and walk around and kind of investigate, and you get these radio signals, and at some point I think you go to a slightly different dimension of the same area. It's $19.99, which I would say is probably at a premium. And if we look at what this developer is making, let's see, their next game is After Party, which has like no release date set, and it seems to have the same kind of art style, and it seems like it's probably the same thing. So anyways, this article probably, I really don't have time to read articles. It's becoming more and more apparent, but this article probably goes to show a real issue with getting an interview from someone who has had a single success, and he's talking about maybe his experience in the old days, which was not really relevant. Like, if he was working for a different company and making licensed games, that just is kind of nothing. Here, the final paragraph says, after first joining Disney Animation as a production coordinator on Toy Story 2 and A Bug's Life, Crackle moved over to Universal during the heyday of mascot platformers. Without any game development experience or qualifications, he was given directorship over his own IP for Microsoft, working with a British dev team. So it's basically a guy that got lucky. And yeah, he's just kind of promoting this. Like, there's a picture here that's not loading. It says After Party set to release sometime this year. Follows 2 recently deceased millennials challenging Satan to a drinking contest in the bowels of hell.
I will fight with honor.
There is some of this that I can kind of agree with, and I definitely felt it while playing the old Star Wars games. The idea of making a flight simulator and putting Star Wars on it and making it and calling it X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, for instance, is kind of ridiculous, because you don't need to invest that money into the license of Star Wars when you could just make a good flight simulator game and call it EVE Online, or Star Citizen, or like there are games out there that there are their own IP, and because they're their own IP, they've got more development, more funding for things like that. And so, yeah, licensed games for the most part have always sucked, and they've, for the most part, nowadays gone away. Excuse me. I was saying the same thing Monday, like Conan games. It would be great if there was a game set in a universe like the Conan comic book series, but in books and movies, or whatever the Conan universe really is to most people. But there's really no reason to actually spend the money on that license.
The battle! The battle!
Like, you could just make a medieval fantasy game, or a barbarian fantasy game, I guess is not medieval. So yeah, I don't think this GameIndustry.biz article has anything important to say, so I'm gonna skip forward. Gamatsu, I guess I should applaud Gamatsu for keeping their articles concise and short. Anyways, Gamatsu has an article, Raiden 5 Director's Cut rated for the Switch in Taiwan, so potentially a new Raiden game coming to the Switch, or Raiden 5 was originally released on PS4 and PC in 2017. The Director's Cut is an enhanced version of that. The original Raiden 5 launched on Xbox One on May of 2016, so it's a republish. I could see if you were a fan of actual shoot-'em-ups, flying around, playing the classic Raiden games on the Switch, kind of makes sense. You'd almost hope that you could turn the Switch screen sideways, though, so you could get some more verticality out of it. Which is not something I think I've seen any Switch game do. But yeah, if you're going to play an arcade style game, playing it on a portable system makes a little bit of sense. If you're going to try to get kids or even younger adults into old school arcade games, the Switch is probably as good of a place as any to release your game and try to get a few more sales. What else do we want to do? I have filled up my hand. My board has been filled up, so I can't do anything.
I fight.
So just keep attacking, and then we'll be done in a couple turns. Next, we have a game on Steam called Elephants Can't Jump. This idea is kind of funny. It's an octopus riding an elephant to do a platforming game, and there's a little bit of artisticness here. It's not just horrible MS Paint graphics, but it is pretty bad, and clearly this is not a heavily polished platformer. It seems like there's no enemies in the game at all, and very few challenges otherwise. It's discounted to $6.99. Yep, this is not a game that should make it to the wish list. Alright, where's the other guy? Didn't I have two of them? Or did he destroy it? Alright, fine. We'll do this. We'll do this. We'll do this. We'll do this.
Your peace.
Done.
And then we'll end the turn. Gamma Sutra has an article, EA soliciting help from Anthem players to figure out the PS4 crashing issues. There's some slight misreporting on the Anthem crashing issues. The fact that it can force crashes on almost every single platform, particularly the PS4, to the point where it's corrupting the database and you have to like hold down the power button and then plug in a controller, and then get into the recovery menu. I don't even know the full settings, and then go down to rebuild the database, which then takes forever. Is bad. It's also questionable. Why do you need to rebuild a database instead of just having a backup? That seems silly. But whatever. There we go. Victory. The fact that any game can do that is really bad, and that's a flaw in certification, like something that would not have been allowed to happen on older generations of consoles. This game would have never been tested and never been certified. In fact, game developers used to complain all the time that failing certification would delay the release of games. Now we've gone the exact opposite direction, and now games never get delayed. Instead, they get pushed out unfinished all the time. But even if you're going to accept a reality where console games are just broken betas that are on the disc, and then day one patches fix everything, the fact still remains, this kind of is an unheard of thing, like, for all of the PlayStations and all of the Xboxes and all of the Nintendo consoles. I don't think I've ever heard of a game going into being sold in a store that could actually cause significant problems. Now, the misreporting there is the part that people are saying it's bricking your PS4, and that's just not true. And some people are even trying to create this concept of a soft brick of your PS4, and that too is not true. That's just not what's happening. Something is bricked only if it is absolutely not recoverable by any reasonable means whatsoever. So this is a term that I first became familiar with from phones. So if your entire phone is formatted and erased, but you could then put a you can still connect to it and like flash a factory default firmware on it, and flash a factory default operating system on it. That's not bricked. It's only bricked when everything is erased and you can't connect to the phone and flash the firmware or the operating system on it. And I've bricked things, so I know that feeling.
Your magic shall not save you.
So in the instance of a PlayStation 4 being bricked, you wouldn't be able to hold down the power button. You wouldn't be able to go into recovery mode. You wouldn't be able to potentially plug in a thumb drive with a factory default firmware. It's ideally should be close to impossible to brick anything without physically attacking or destroying something inside of a device. Like, that is the number one thing you don't want to have happen as a developer of consumer electronics goods. Is the last thing you want to do is have scenarios where you have to ship something broken back to a factory to scrap for parts, or ship a brand new unit out to a consumer, because you want to avoid shipping more than anything else. Moving on though. Game Industry .biz has another article that probably don't have time to read, but I'll throw it out here. Full crunch, no crunch, self crunch, one developer's career and going solo. And what this is talking about is developers, well, the subtitle here is developers Seth Rosen reflects on his experience of crunch working on BioShock Infinite, Don't Starve Together, and Mafia 3. I imagine Don't Starve Together was the solo game. And I wouldn't be surprised if BioShock Infinite was the no crunch game. The thing here is, the reason why crunch as a concept exists in video game programming at all is because it was an idea that people let be established and kind of enforced on themselves before it became industry standard. Like, it's totally believable that most video game programmers and most programmers in general overworked themselves and they're workaholics, and they got pushed further into that mentality, even further than they really would have gone. So yeah. In the end, what it boils down to, in my opinion, is that there should be less of a people should just be forced to take breaks. Like, literally, that's really what it comes down for some people. So you need to be forced to take a break and take a vacation and just recenter yourself, because even though people don't think they need to, most of the people that are workaholics, they eventually crash and burn. It eventually turns when you get into your mid-30s, 40s, 50s. All of a sudden you don't have as much energy because you're older, and you start internalizing that somewhat, and you just and start being upset with yourself because you can't work as hard as you would want to. I mean, literally, earlier in the stream, I was saying the same thing, as I just feel like I'm not making as much content as I used to make. And it's probably true. And maybe some people would say I'm a workaholic for this YouTube channel, considering how little, how it's not really paying anything to do it, but by most standards, I think most people would say I'm pretty laid back, and I'm certainly trying to embrace that some more and not overwork myself and burn myself out, because what I'm trying to avoid more than anything is a day that comes by where I just say, you know what, forget it, I'm just not going to make any YouTube content at all. I'm just giving up the YouTube channel after 5+ years of effort. Amazing. Like, that's the big avoid. And I would never do crunch at any company. Like, this is a bad thing to say out loud, but you know what, I've been pushed around in previous jobs before, and I'm just not willing to sacrifice my physical and mental well-being so that some employer that didn't schedule right or hire enough people can get some bonus or get a project done that they should have never agreed to doing in the first place.
Reporting for duty. Reporting for duty.
So yeah, I'm past that point where I'd be willing. This is another one of these stories on game industry that might be interesting to read if you're thinking about working in the video game industry. There's a quote here. If you're going to volunteer to work real hard for no additional compensation, then corporations are your best friend. And yeah, no duh on that one. I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this and hope for poison. Yeah. So I can do this, this, and that.
Speak your peace.
And this.
No more take candles.
I don't see how I'm gonna win this. No. Here's another quote. That's pretty much all you have to do in most articles. Is if they're highlighting a quote, that's the 3 sentences in the entire article that are worth. When I joined Hangar 13, which would be Mafia 2, I started crunching as soon as I arrived in San Francisco. I never really figured out how to live there. Quote, here's another quote. I don't know how to live my life. I don't remember what normal days are like. Seems to be about accurate for workaholics.
Reporting for duty.
Go ahead and hit that. See if there are any other quotes here. Here's a quote. No, unionization is not going to fix everything that's wrong with the industry, but by God, it would help. It will help. I think a lot of this is definitely a push towards unionization. Unionization would definitely fix some of the problems, but not all. Like he is definitely right there, because what would happen if the video game industry unionized is you would see no real reduction in crunch, but you would see a major increase in overtime compensation for crunching, to the point where a couple years down the line, when people are budgeting and scheduling and hiring for the next job, they're going to say, oh, we can't actually afford to have this few employees. We need twice as many employees. Which that's really what it comes down to. Is, for as much as video game journalists and activists in general talk about wanting to hire more people, more minorities and such, you could easily cause a lot more people, more minorities to be hired when you just force the video game industry through unionization to hire 2, 3, 4 times as many employees that they actually need. It is jaw-dropping to see how few people work on some games. And a lot of times it's gotten a lot worse in recent times than it even was before. You have some indie developers that are making single-player games that are way better on scale than what an old LucasArts game would be. And a LucasArts game, you look at some of those credits as I'm playing these Star Wars games, and there's like 100 people listed there. So that's a big team. So yeah, and it's not like AAA games, even though they've gotten 4 or 5 times better in quality and bigger. It's not like AAA games credits go on forever either. Although, frankly, let's move on, because there's a lot of news here, and I'm kind of going over opinion pieces. Or just spouting off my own opinion, which, okay, I mean, it's my stream, I can do whatever I want, but I'd like to actually have something more to say. GameIndustry.biz has another article, 1 Hour, 1 Life developer struggles with an unofficial port. Jason Rower stands by the decision to release the game into the public domain despite problems with customer confusion around a mobile adaptation.
Well played.
Are you gonna win? I don't know why this guy's well playing me. For the past 15 years, it says an independent developer, Jason Rower, has released all of his work into the public domain. He's apparently never run into a serious issue as a result of this decision before, but he's having trouble with an unofficial mobile port of his latest title, PC game, 1 hour, 1 life. Well, this really just tells me that for the past 15 years he's not made a successful game. Because any public domain game that was good would have definitely been ported, would have definitely been copied. And it is an immediate betrayal of what you claimed. Like, if your intent to let people let the public domain literally own your creation, then you can't come back and complain when someone uses it to make a mobile port, even if it is causing people to potentially confuse or even come to you asking for support. Let's try Rush Warrior while we're doing this. I mean, this is just two-faced, is literally what it is. And I've seen several of these 1 hour, 1 life games. They are the games.
The light shall bring victory.
Victory or death!
They are basically like simplistic life simulator games that that you play for like 1 hour and see how far you can go. It is, the article continues, it is the Chinese version of this game that sparked roars, that's R-O-H-R-E-R, his last name, letter. While the previous versions of the mobile game made note that they were an unofficial adaptation of Royal's original PC game. Well, if you put it under the Creative Commons with attribution required, if that's really what he wanted, he wouldn't have had a problem. Well, he might still have had a problem, but he'd have something to stand on.
I see a vision in the flames.
Let's see. Roars said that the demo released on the Chinese store TapTap last week contained no such notice. The Chinese App Store version of the game, as saved by App Annie, also translates the game subtitled as a genuine licensed game. And they're not wrong. Like, when you put it under, like, in the public domain, whatever license you did, which I assume you put it under like a Creative Commons or I don't know, like open source, a full open source license, then you did license it, so it is a genuinely licensed game. Because the Creative Commons license is a license. So his complaint is kind of not valid, at least on the face of it. You made a license by putting it in the public domain with all of the public. You gave it to everyone. Let's see. He dealt with customer complaints. So too bad. Like, if people are finding your contact and contacting you, that just happens when you get big. Like, Giant Bomb talks about that all the time, where they get customer support calls for games like Fortnite, and they're like, we don't work for Fortnite, we don't work for Epic. If you need help, we're not the people to help you. Let's see, is there anything else I wanted to do? No. Here's a quote. I feel like a great deal of damage has already been done to my legacy and reputation as a designer, and an unfathomable amount of damage will be done in the future. I think this is ridiculous. Like, clearly he did not understand what the idea of the licenses are, and he just flippantly released it in the public domain without knowing that. Like, I'd really like to see what license, if any, he released it under. Because even if he just put it in the public domain as by putting it on GitHub or some website like that, there would have been something. Like, that totally would have been a license of something. I don't want this guy to die. So, how can we do this? Play this. And do this. There we go.
Do you like to play with fire?
Apparently he tried to DMCA these games. This game from and take it off of Apple, Google, and TapTap. As a quote here, this is going on for more than 4 days, and I have been pressing matters to attend to family GDC talk, more 1 hour, 1 life updates. So at this point, I guess I give up. And then he says, quote, I've withdrawn my dispute submissions to Apple, Google, and TapTap. So really, this is an article of someone just complaining that they got into something they didn't know what it was. Let's see if I could Google this, because the information here that really I want to know is not getting said. Can I do enough? Whenever a minion takes damage. Let's see. Alright, so I'm on their website, and let's see. We're scrolling down to the bottom of their official website. This may not work. There's a credits link at the bottom. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't look like he's copywriting any of this in any way. Which is not to say he doesn't have a copyright. It just means that his claim for copyright is weak. By the way, I hate to generalize, but if we are going to point out this picture here of this guy, this looks like a guy who didn't bother to read or understand how a license worked, if I've ever seen one before. But yeah, this was the link to his page on credits, and like there's nothing, no copyright at all on his page, it seems like. And so if that's what he thinks open domain is, or public domain, he is using an open source symbol. We can show this off. This is the sort of official open source symbol here for open source software. Is this key hole? So he's using that. He's also saying tech support included and full source code. So yeah, what he's not doing here is creating any kind of license at all. He's just implying that it's open source. This is totally unenforceable. Like, no claim he could ever make, I think, would stand up in court at all. This is just stupidity. It's stupidity in the fact that he failed to use any of the license out there, which is ridiculous. Like, even when you upload a video, what I'm uploading right now is being licensed under either YouTube's license or the Creative Commons license, are the two options that you can pick. But it's being licensed, it's being claimed as copyrighted by default. There's kind of no way, no easy way to even get around that and put up a YouTube video. But this game developer just did not know. I mean, clearly he still doesn't know. He still doesn't understand how license works. Like, you can make a Creative Commons pick and choose. It can be free for non-monetary use. It could be free for monetary use. It could be free for monetary use with attribution, or attribution not needed. It could be, you could write it, frankly, to say anything. It could be free to everybody except for people in, let's say, Spain, just to pick a country. You could say that if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to exclude Spain, but what you can't do is just put your source code out there and then give an indication that you intend for it to be out in public domain and then complain that people used it. For as much as video game developers and other tech companies in general complain about Chinese companies stealing the copyrights and the intellectual property of people, in this is clearly your fault. Like, and it's not too hard to literally say, to just make a filter, change your email, like not respond to those comments, which is inherently, I think, what you would want to do is, for that Chinese version, have a filter that auto responds something like, this game is not an official port, it is claiming to be, it was not authorized by me, and I do not support or endorse it in any way. I have no business dealings with it. Something along that line. And just, you're just gonna have to live with the fact that that there is a competitor, a copy or port of your game. I mean, that's what you were signing up for, was to let any random person who could do it very poorly port your game. Let's see. Moving on, we have an article from TechRaptor. V-Blank Entertainment is bringing Shakedown Hawaii to Epic Games storefront. So Shakedown Hawaii seems to look a lot like a Hotline Miami clone, if I was to guess. It's coming to the Epic Games Store as kind of an exclusive, at least for PC on the Epic Store. But it is also coming to the Switch, 3DS, PS4, and PS Vita, which is strange. This is another instance, I would say, of it not really mattering as much as it probably should, because it's only going to be a big deal in the instances of games that people were super hyped about and really wanted to play. But it is certainly another grain of sand, another straw that could break the camel's back as we see more and more exclusives. But it's still really only like one game, one AAA game has been exclusive that mattered, and everything else that's been exclusive so far on the Epic Store are these small indie games that probably weren't gonna ever sell anyways, and so they're just getting their money up front by signing an exclusivity deal. Meanwhile, the Epic Store is not really gaining any good publicity because it feels very much like a storefront that is full of not a lot of things, and even when it does have some games, they're not very good games.
Time moves quickly.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Here and Elsewhere, which seems to be a collection of like asset flip, kind of space mining game. It's VR. Like, this video is weird. It says 20,000 years in the future and our signals have been received, but it's too late for life on Earth. The hyperdimensional crystals have arrived to a blasted wasteland. And see. So then they start just growing these crystals on this planet, and it kind of looks like this is a clone of Grow Up, but there's no robot or anything. This game is free to play, but it requires VR, and it really doesn't look that good. So, yeah. I guess that's a thing.
Reporting for duty.
Let's go and protect ourselves a little bit.
The battle.
Let's see. Game Industry, our GameIndustry.biz has an opinion piece here. We're losing the history of the App Store opinion. Touch Arcade's editor-in-chief on the vanishing legacy of mobile games and why he's leaving the site to save them. So somebody is leaving Touch Arcade, and thus they've given him a platform he really didn't deserve. There is, I guess, a general idea here that yes, the App Store in particular not supporting the old style, like I think they were 32-bit apps, has made a lot of those mobile games be abandoned. On the other hand, most of those mobile games were terrible anyways, and people have copies, certainly. People have copies on their old iPhones that they either backed up. So this is hardly a case of really losing history. For anything that is even slightly popular these days, there's immediately somebody that's ripping those games and making copies. It's not the old days of like NES ROMs or something where it was highly expensive and people didn't have computers and it was practically impossible to make a ROM of a game. Like, those things exist, and they can exist very easily. All that is really happening is that the average iPhone user can't play a few select games that are actually good still, while also the App Store is getting massively cleaned up by having a bunch of terrible games and terrible apps in general just removed. And yes, it was draconian and ham-fisted for Apple to just say we're not going to support 32-bit apps anymore, but nothing stopped the developers of those games to patch their games. They just didn't care. It was literally apathy. And as an Android user, more and more, like every time I have to get a new phone, I go through all of my apps and I say, is this something I still use? Is this something that isn't just a lot of the apps on Android were apps to fix little things I didn't like with the operating system itself, and just as the operating system itself got better, I didn't need those apps. So yeah, there are fewer and fewer apps on my phone every couple of years, and there practically are no new apps I ever install on my phone. I occasionally, once every year or so, will try to see if I can find something that would be entertaining as far as a game, but that's kind of it.
The light protects me.
Alright, so I'm just gonna go ahead and kill that.
Job's done.
And I don't know what you could do about this. Otherwise, the only thing you can do is really make an archive.org type website and just have basically ROMs, which probably would get DMCA'd. Meanwhile, I'm sure there's a torrent out there that has one of every iPhone game that matters anyways.
No more take and
Let's take that. The bottom of this article is Eli Hodap was the editor-in-chief of Touch Arcade from 2009 to 2019. 10 years, frankly, is not, oh, I'm moving abruptly to follow my dream. It's 10 years. I've worked here long enough. I'm getting out. So let's do that.
for justice.
Well, this one wouldn't have explosive trap anyways, would it? So I can just attack.
The battle! The battle!
Interesting. Eli Hodap has now joined Game Club, a new company dedicated to bringing premium game experiences back to mobile. So this really is just an advertisement, and he is now the VP of Business Development. So literally, this entire article is nothing but an advertisement.
For justice.
I imagine what this is going to come down to is I'll get this down to 1 health, and then next turn I'll do 1 damage, and then that'll give him immune, and then I'll have to win the next turn. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Territory Idol. It's already mixed on the reviews. It looks horrible. Like, really terrible. I call these like old DOS games, but honestly, even playing the old Star Wars X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter games, those are old DOS games too, and they managed to do 3D graphics. They managed to look good, even if it is just 2D graphics. This is an early access, free-to-play game for no reason with in-app purchases. Yeah, right. What a joke. Alright, so I'm gonna do this. And let's see what this does. Oh, that actually won. I'm surprised. I'm really surprised. Let's see. Do I have my timer going? Yeah, I have about 10 more minutes. Let's see. Challenge a friend is the only thing left, so let's see if we can spectate this guy and see if we can challenge him. Game of Sutra has an article, and this is more of a procedural announcement, I suppose. Vivendi, the viaduct company set up by Napoleon to give a monopoly in France to his like cousin, I believe, and then eventually grew into a giant media conglomerate. Vivendi has sold off its final Ubisoft shares. It's really procedural, though. I mean, Vivendi already said that they weren't going to give up their attempt at a hostile takeover of Ubisoft, so it doesn't really matter if they held on to a few shares here and there. The quote here is, Vivendi is no longer a Ubisoft shareholder and maintains its commitment to refrain from purchasing Ubisoft shares for a period of 5 years. So maybe they'll come back in 5 years and try again. There is some slight differences in the law in France, where Ubisoft is headquartered, about just automatic procedures that initiate if you own a certain amount of shares in a company. It seems kind of ridiculous that you can't. Well, it seems ridiculous to me, but there might be a good reason for it. But it seems like it would be fine to own 95% of the shares in a company, not vote on anything, and just let the board run it and let the company act as an independent entity and just take all the money from it. Like, it would be kind of nice if there were hands-off investors out there, but there aren't. Every investor is trying to get as much money as possible, and that because they're trying to get as much money as possible, they're always pushing for companies like EA to do shady things, like lay off a bunch of people or add microtransactions, or you know, in general do things that aren't consumer friendly or good for the industry in general. Moving on, here's a smaller story that didn't get reported by everybody, it seems. Gamer Sutra has an article, a multiplayer Skyrim mod is criticized for lifting code from another mod. So the multiplayer Skyrim mod, Skyrim Together, is facing criticism from seemingly taking code from another Skyrim mod, though the developers themselves argue that the code was only present in the prototyping stages of development and has been removed. While the accusation hasn't branched into legal threat of any kind, taking code from another project without permission or attribution is the kind of thing that can easily land developers in hot water, both in modding scene and full-fledged game development. So this is a case of a not white room development. So somebody literally saw the code of somebody and then copied it in the prototyping stage and rewrote it to be their own code, but still they saw someone else's code for that. Whereas a white room development, which is what a more professional organization would do, is that there would be just some general things, like you would have the beginning of the code and the ending of the code. At the beginning of the code, there would be some values put in, some variables. So you would tell the developers, you're going to get variable position X, position Y, position Z, and you're going to output a new position X, position Y, position Z when your function is done, when your code is done. And let's say the function is designed to walk forward. So you would need those positions and probably a little bit more information to figure out how the character is going to walk forward. This is a simplistic example that you probably would not have to program too much of. But that's all you would tell them, and is what you're getting when the function starts and what you want when the function comes out. That's the idea of a white room. It's not an actual physical white room usually, or a clean room type development. That's not what they did. They saw every bit of the code. They saw everything that was happening, and it gets really, really hard to rewrite your code so that it doesn't, so it isn't just a copy of that. Particularly when it's really easy to say, well, this code already works, let's just keep it. Let's not change much of anything. And I've done coding, and I've certainly seen other people's code and used other people's code as a starting frame. So I can kind of understand what the modders were thinking. And particularly if you're making a mod and you're not selling it for any money, you're probably not thinking of yourself as an actual professional that needs to follow any professional standards. But this is a bad precedent to start a coding career on. But you will do it. You definitely will see other people's code and copy it. And the only thing I could say is, once you've reached a certain level of coding, you've got a way in which you want things to work, and you've got a style in which you want to label variables, and you've got a naming style. So there's slight ways to change things there. And if you're doing a significant amount of coding, there's ways to move things around and have a style there that makes it something very much like your own. But there are wrong ways definitely to do it also. If you're just going into someone else's code and you're removing the comments that the original creator made, or you're adding a new line like hitting return and double spacing things, that's just a surface level change that is not realistic. Like, you're not really doing any coding there. Almost inherently, looking at someone else's code, you're going to want to make some changes or modifications or improvement. Let's see. So, yeah. The other issue, according to this article that's arisen, is Skyrim Together is making $25,000 per month on Patreon. Must be nice. Which kind of makes, I guess, makes it that they are actually getting paid. Yeah, but I really can't disagree with, we need to make a prototype. We need to make it fast. We need to see if we can actually get this project done. Let's copy as much code. Most code that you can find in general is some kind of open source code anyways, so if they found the code, that probably means it was open source or Creative Commons or something. But there is a lot of value you may not realize you get by trying to cheat your way to a close to final product early to find out if it's ever going to work. Because particularly in the idea of the mod Skyrim Together, you're talking about introducing online connectivity and shared worlds resources in a giant open world section game that was definitely not there in the main game. And there hasn't, I don't think, except for Elder Scrolls Online, which is a completely different type of game, like all the other Fallout games and Skyrim games, none of that's had multiplayer in it. So that is like a really, really big task and mod. It's not a simple, we've changed the dragon's texture to look like Thomas the Tank Engine style mod. So in the prototyping stage, copying as much code as possible, seeing if it could really work makes a good amount of sense. And there's literally no way to fix this either. Like, it wouldn't win in a lawsuit if what is being said is true. If it was only used in the prototyping stage, that probably wouldn't win in a lawsuit. And literally nothing they code will ever come out as being clean, as if we've started from scratch and we've forgotten everything we've learned up until this point, and we wrote the code without using that original code. No, that knowledge is in the programmers' heads, and it will forever be there. So while the code is a little bit dirty, it's not something that an end user should care about. Perhaps the patrons don't want to support that, and that's certainly their choice. But also, in general, it's kind of like a non-story. Like, I imagine a lot of codes out there, a lot of mods out there steal code. For as many games that we see on Steam that look like they are either getting pre-bought, pre-made assets and pre-made things from the Unity store, and a lot of games out there that feel like they very possibly are just stealing things directly on Steam. That's just kind of the name of the game for a lot of people. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Far Cry New Dawn review, dead and buried. So apparently they didn't like it. Let's see, they gave it a 6.5 good. Oh, they did like it. Frustrating, Far Cry New Dawn doesn't deliver in any real way. It doesn't pay off from Far Cry 5's ending. It doesn't offer new spins on the Far Cry formula. Well, doesn't even offer players an escape from money woes. It's just another Far Cry, and that's just not enough anymore. Pros, outposts still rock, Hope County's charm, plentiful expeditions, and minimal perk. Perk must be a character. Alright, come on. There we go. Aw, you suck. Well, you're not my friend anymore. The cons for Far Cry are slapdash storytelling, overwhelming push for microtransactions, and video game nonsense finale. Okay, so yeah, kind of in the same way that I'm now rethinking DOA, because I saw some more videos of, like, you know, DOA 5 has over $1,000 worth of DLC too. So I think DOA is as a fighting game, as one of the potential fighting games I might want to cover, since it's falling out of favor. I think Far Cry 5 and Far Cry New Dawn have fallen below the table of anything I really want to play. I think it's pretty obvious. If I was going to play any of the Far Cry games, I should probably just play Far Cry 3, maybe Far Cry 4, and Far Cry Blood Dragon, and maybe Far Cry Primal. And even that probably should be spread around over the course of 10 years, if anything. I'm probably not going to play any Far Cry game until I've caught up with all the Assassin's Creed games, and at that point I might just be done with them. With open world games like that. Well, we didn't really need to challenge a friend, but it would have been nice. And we've been going an hour and 35 minutes, so we are good. So I'm gonna end this recording here, and we'll switch over to the European account. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.